Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we're diving headfirst into a place that is, well, it's so much more than just a state. We're talking about California. When you really dig into the data, the history, and the geography, California operates like this massive, incredibly complex micronation. It's a land defined almost entirely by its staggering contrasts, and that's exactly what we're going to unpack for you today.
But before we get into the heavy data and those sweeping landscapes, I want to hook you with a quick bit of trivia. Where did the name California actually come from? You might think it has indigenous roots, or maybe it's a Spanish geological term, kind of like Nevada, but the truth? It's actually much stranger.
The name most likely comes from a fictional story, specifically a 1510 Spanish novel called The Adventures of Esplandian. It featured a mythical ruler named Queen Calafia. Her kingdom was this remote island rich in gold and pearls, and it was inhabited by beautiful warriors who literally bred griffins for war. I mean, how wild is that? And it brilliantly illustrates our whole theme today. It's incredibly fitting that California, a place globally famous for reinvention, Hollywood magic, and gold rushes, started out as a literal myth.
Okay, so here's our roadmap for today. We just covered myth to reality. Next up is a history of rapid change, followed by a geography of stark extremes. Then we'll look at the global economic juggernaut, and finally we'll wrap up with the California paradox.
Section 1. A history of rapid change from indigenous diversity to statehood.
If there's one constant in California's past, it's sudden, often tumultuous transformation. The sheer scale of life before European contact is absolutely incredible. Long before the Spanish arrived, California was one of the most culturally and linguistically diverse areas in pre-Columbian North America. Historians agree there were at least 300,000 indigenous people living there, making up more than 70 distinct ethnic groups. They were thriving across a massive variety of ecosystems, from the towering redwood forests all the way down to the desert floors.
Then, we fast forward to the 19th century, and the pace of change just becomes blistering. In 1846, American settlers rebelled against Mexican rule in the Bear Flag Revolt. By 1848, the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo officially ceded the territory to the United States, and, almost unbelievably, gold was discovered that very same year. Just 2 years later, in 1850, California bypassed the usual territorial phase entirely and was admitted to the Union as the 31st state.
That 1848 discovery of gold was the absolute catalyst. It triggered a massive global migration of prospectors. To put it in perspective, the settler population exploded from around 8,000 to over 100,000 by 1850. But this rapid expansion had dual outcomes. While it brought immense, unprecedented wealth and development, the historical consensus shows it also resulted in the devastating California genocide of the indigenous populations. They were displaced and killed in staggering numbers as settlers claimed the land.
Section 2. Geography of stark extremes, peaks, valleys, and fault lines.
That rapid historical expansion we just talked about was shaped heavily by the land itself, and the physical landscape of California, it's just mind-boggling. Consider the sheer contrast. On one hand, you have Mount Whitney, towering at 14,505 feet. That's the highest peak in the contiguous United States. On the other hand, you have Badwater Basin in Death Valley, plunging to 279 feet below sea level, which is the lowest and hottest point in North America. The absolutely crazy part? These two geographical extremes are less than 90 miles apart from each other. It perfectly encapsulates the state's dramatic physical nature.
And the drama definitely doesn't stop at the surface. 37,000. That is the number of earthquakes recorded in California every single year. Yeah, you heard that right. Because it sits right on the Pacific Ring of Fire, crisscrossed by the San Andreas and other fault lines, California holds a staggering 2/3 of the entire nation's earthquake risk. Now, most of these 37,000 quakes are way too small to feel, but that seismic energy beneath the surface is a constant, everyday reality.
Beyond the earthquakes, the state's climate presents some really harsh realities. The beautiful Mediterranean climate that draws millions of people also brings severe vulnerabilities. Residents face severe, ongoing droughts, massive seasonal wildfires that get whipped up by Santa Ana winds, and more recently, intense atmospheric rivers causing devastating winter flooding. So this geography is as perilous as it is beautiful, and these climate shifts are increasingly dictating environmental policies all over the globe.
Section 3. The Global Economic Juggernaut, a subnational superpower.
Yet despite all these extreme environmental challenges, the combination of geography, resources, and population has generated unprecedented wealth. Let's see how this builds into something incredible. As of 2025, California's gross state product is an estimated $4.296 trillion. Think about that for a second. If California were an independent country, it would be the fourth largest economy in the entire world. It sits right behind Germany and just ahead of Japan. It is literally the world's largest subnational economy.
So what exactly powers a $4.2 trillion engine? Well, it's incredibly diverse. You've got Silicon Valley driving global technology. You have the Central Valley, which leads the entire nation in agricultural output. We're talking dairy, almonds, grapes. You've got Hollywood, which has profoundly influenced global entertainment for over a century. And of course, you have massive global trade infrastructure.
Speaking of trade, consider this quote. With the busiest port in the country, California plays a pivotal role in the global supply chain, hauling in about 40% of goods imported to the U.S. That's referring to the port of Los Angeles. Meaning, nearly half of the imported goods sitting in your own home right now likely came through this single state's infrastructure. It is a staggering logistical footprint.
Section 4, the California Paradox, Wealth and Poverty.
All of this monumental wealth brings us to the thematic climax of our explainer today. This is where the extremes of geography and history translate into socioeconomic realities. First, let's look at the peak of the economic mountain. In 2019, California was home to over 1 million millionaire households. That's a lot of commas. It's more than any other state in the nation, fueled largely by those booming tech hubs in Northern California and the massive entertainment and real estate markets down south.
But then we flip the coin, and we see this number, 23.5%. When you use the supplemental poverty measure, which factors in the exorbitant cost of living and housing in the state, California actually has a poverty rate of 23.5%. That is the highest poverty rate of any U.S. state.
This brilliantly illustrates the paradox we're talking about. On one hand, we have the fourth largest global economy, home to Silicon Valley billionaires and stunning coastal mansions. On the other hand, we have regions like the Central Valley, which is characterized as one of the most economically depressed regions in the U.S., where migrant agricultural workers often make below minimum wage. The extremes of Mount Whitney and Death Valley are mirrored perfectly right in the state's bank accounts.
Section 5. Conclusion. The micronation shaping the globe.
How do we even wrap our heads around a place so vast and so contradictory? Let's quickly summarize the journey we've just taken. The Golden State was literally named after a mythical island of gold. It boasts a geography that spans from 14,000-foot alpine peaks all the way down to the lowest desert basins on the continent. It powers a massive $4.296 trillion global economic engine. And yet, it's defined by complex, sometimes painful socioeconomic paradoxes, where ultimate wealth and profound poverty exist side by side.
So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. As we look forward, how will this land of extremes continue to shape the future of our global culture, our technology, and our climate? Because, as we've seen, whatever happens in California rarely stays in California. It echoes across the world. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next one.